My parents barely noticed me. On my 21st birthday, they gave my brother a watch. I left that night. 2 weeks later, my dad called and said, "Please come back." I started counting down the days to my 21st birthday when I was 19. Not because I was excited to be an adult, but because I knew it was the day I could finally leave. My name is Ethan, and I grew up in a home that looked perfect from the outside, a two-story house with white shutters and a large oak tree in the front yard. But inside, it always felt like I was breathing someone else's air, like a guest in a place that never wanted me. My brother Luke is 3 years younger than I am, and he has always been the golden child. I don't mean that in a bitter, older brother way. I mean he could crash the family car into the mailbox, and people would rush to ask if he was okay. Meanwhile, I once forgot to vacuum before dinner and got grounded for a week. Growing up, I learned to stay quiet. I didn't want to give them a reason to be angry. Whenever I entered a room, my father's voice would shift, tight and clipped, like I was a problem he couldn't solve. My mother wasn't much different. She didn't yell, but she had a way of looking straight through me, as if I belonged to another family and had wandered into the wrong house. Luke, on the other hand, had an easy smile, natural charm, and a talent for always being in the right place at the right time. He was a miracle baby after several miscarriages. He was the one who survived. I think my parents decided right then that he was special and everything else faded away. Still, I tried. I earned decent grades. I stayed out of trouble. I worked part-time stocking shelves at a grocery store to save for college because I knew they wouldn't help. Whenever my future came up, my father would grunt and say, "You're smart. You'll figure it out." Luke, meanwhile, got a new laptop for his 16th birthday because he needed it for school, even though he mostly used it for games and scrolling through TikTok. I remember asking my mother if I could borrow it once to fill out college applications. She said, "Ask your brother." I did. He said no. So when my 21st birthday finally came, I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a card or a family dinner. I didn't even expect a gift. I just wanted, I don't know, a moment of acknowledgement that I'd made it through 21 years in a house that barely tolerated me, that maybe they saw me. That year, my birthday landed on a Saturday. I didn't have work, so I slept in and went downstairs expecting someone to wish me a happy birthday. Instead, I saw my father in the kitchen tying a ribbon around a sleek black box, while Luke bounced on his heels like it was Christmas morning. I stood there, half asleep, watching the exchange like I was interrupting. My mom smiled and said, "Perfect timing. Come on, Luke, open it." No one looked at me. No one noticed I hadn't said a word. Luke tore open the box and let out an exaggerated gasp like he'd won something huge. Inside was a silver, expensive-looking watch with a leather band and Roman numerals. "Oh my God, Dad, this is insane," Luke said, grinning as he slid it onto his wrist. "Now I don't have to borrow your old one." My father laughed and ruffled his hair. "You deserve it, kid. You've been working so hard lately." Hard. His biggest achievement that week was getting to second base with a girl from his chemistry class. I stood there silently, hoping someone would remember why the day mattered. Eventually, my mother glanced at me and said, "Ethan, don't look so bitter. It's not always about gifts. When you're older, you'll understand that what matters is who you become, not what you receive." It felt like a slap. She said it in that calm, patronizing tone she used when she wanted to sound wise, like I was a greedy child who didn't get it. I tried to nod, but my throat tightened. "I thought we were having cake," I said quietly. "Oh, we already did," Luke replied casually. "While you were asleep." I blinked. "You had cake without me?" My mother quickly said, "It was just something small, nothing important." "Whose name was on it?" I asked. The silence lasted just a little too long. Then Luke smiled and said, "Mine? I mean, it was kind of a joint thing, but it's not your birthday." "Don't be dramatic," my father snapped. "It's just a cake." I wanted to yell. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I laughed. It came out sharp and wrong, not like me at all. I laughed because if I didn't, I would have cried in front of them, and I refused to give them that. Luke raised an eyebrow like I was the unstable one. My mother looked at me with disappointment, as if I'd spoiled an otherwise perfect day. That night, when I went up to my room, I didn't even turn on the light. I sat on my bed for a long time, staring at the floor and trying to swallow the lump in my throat. One thought kept repeating, they're never going to love you the way you want. It doesn't matter what you do or how hard you try. You're never going to be Luke. That's when I decided to leave. I grabbed my bag and packed a hoodie, a water bottle, a couple of granola bars, and the $50 I'd hidden in an envelope at the back of my sock drawer. I didn't really have a plan, but I had my ID, a phone charger, and a bus schedule I'd secretly printed at the library weeks earlier. At midnight, when the house was quiet and everyone was asleep, I slipped out the back door and didn't look back. I thought I'd be gone for a day or two, maybe stay at the shelter near the downtown church, maybe look for part-time work or crash on someone's couch if I got lucky. I wasn't sure. I just knew I couldn't stay. What I didn't expect was that 2 weeks later, my phone would ring with a number I hadn't seen in days. My dad. I ignored the first 2 calls. On the third, I answered. Before I could speak, his voice came through, strained and barely above a whisper. "Your room's still here," he said. "Please pick up. Just tell me where you are. Please." I could tell something had changed. I just didn't know what or why. And the part that scared me most was that I wasn't sure I wanted to go back. I didn't return. Not that week, not the next, and not after the voicemail. 2 days later, my father left another message, this one quieter but angrier. "I don't know what you think you're proving, Ethan, but this isn't how family works. You don't just disappear." That almost made me laugh. Funny, considering I'd spent my entire life feeling invisible in that house. I stayed away. I moved around. First the church shelter, then a small room for rent run by Lynn, a retired mechanic with a soft spot for stray dogs and people. I paid what I could afford, $130 a week for a mattress in the corner of his garage, separated by plywood and curtains. It smelled like grease and metal, but it was warm. And for the first time, I didn't have to follow someone else's rules just to exist. I got a part-time job unloading trucks at a shipping warehouse and spent the rest of my time filling out college applications at the public library, where the computers logged out every 30 minutes. I didn't tell anyone where I was. I didn't want them finding me until I had something to show for it, but they did find me eventually. Luke showed up first. One afternoon, as I was leaving the library, I saw him leaning against a car that was clearly too nice for him. A new model, glossy black paint, leather interior. He hadn't noticed me yet. He was staring at his phone, looking bored. I froze. My instinct was to turn around and leave, but curiosity kept me there. A second later, he spotted me and smirked, like I was late to something I didn't know I was supposed to attend. "There you are," he said, slipping his phone into his jacket. "You look terrible." "Thanks," I said flatly. "Seriously though, Mom's losing it. Dad's acting strange. You made your point? Just come home." "I'm not coming back," he sighed. "Come on, man. You had your little tantrum. Now everyone's waiting for you to crawl back so things can go back to normal." That word hit me hard. "You mean the kind of normal where my birthday cake had your name on it?" I asked him to explain. "That kind of normal?" He shrugged like I had commented on the weather. "It was just a mistake. You always take things too seriously. They didn't mean anything by it." "You're right," I said. "They never mean anything by it." "That's exactly the problem." His smile dropped. "Look, I don't know what kind of sad story you're telling yourself, but you're not the only one with issues, okay? You don't see me running away." "No," I said. "You just see the world bending so you never have to." That landed. His jaw tightened. "Whatever. Just know that when you finally come back, don't expect a celebration. They've been trying really hard to reach you." I nodded slowly. "Yeah. Did they tell you what they said the night I left?" He didn't answer. I didn't expect him to. "Tell them I'm fine," I said as I stepped away. "And if they're truly worried, they can stop calling my phone and start asking themselves why I stopped answering." After a week or two, the contact faded. No more calls, no texts, no messages. I assumed they'd moved on, probably turned my room into storage, a home gym, or some project to fill the space. I thought that was the end until I got an email. Not from my parents, but from my high school counselor, Mrs. Duro. It was short and awkward, like she wasn't sure whether to sound concerned or polite. She said she hoped I was safe and doing well, but wanted to let me know that my transcripts had been requested and withdrawn. According to their records, My parents had contacted the school and said I would not be attending college and that all future application correspondence should be canceled. I sat in the library staring at the screen, barely breathing. I read it again, then again. They had tried to erase me. I called the school immediately, my heart racing, and thankfully Mrs. Duro picked up. I explained everything. She confirmed it and apologized, clearly realizing she hadn't known the full story. I spent the next 2 days untangling the situation and making sure my applications were still valid. Some deadlines had already passed. I lost a scholarship opportunity I had a real chance at. That night I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the email, thinking, what kind of people actively block their own child's future? It wasn't about control anymore. It was sabotage. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. What I wanted was to disappear so completely from their narrative that one day they'd have to explain why their firstborn never came back. But things didn't end there. A month later, I received a letter in the mail, an actual letter, paper and envelope, no return address, just my name written in my father's handwriting. Inside wasn't an apology. It was a list, a real bullet-pointed list of conditions I had to meet before we could even discuss me coming home. Things like, stop blaming others for your unhappiness. Apologize for leaving and cutting off your family. Acknowledge the sacrifices we made. Understand that everything we did was out of love. I read it quietly. Then I laughed, because there wasn't much else to do. It wasn't a letter. It was a contract. Another way to make me the problem. Another attempt to pull me back into guilt, obligation, and performance. I crumpled it up, threw it away, and told myself again that I was done. Then something happened that changed everything. It was early spring. I had started working longer hours at the warehouse to save for community college. One evening, Lynn came into the garage holding a thick envelope. He said someone had stopped by earlier, asked if Ethan lived there, and handed it over without explaining anything. I opened it carefully. Inside was a formal legal notice from a law office. It stated that I was being retroactively removed as a dependent from my parents' tax filings, that I was no longer considered part of their household, and that I had until the end of the month to retrieve any remaining belongings before they would be disposed of at the homeowner's discretion. Attached was a sticky note. It said, "This is what consequences look like. Sign, Mom." That was the moment something locked into place. It wasn't anger. It wasn't grief. It was clarity. They didn't just want to hurt me. They wanted to erase me. And if that was the game they chose, they had no idea who I was about to become. I barely spoke for 2 days after that. Lynn noticed but didn't push. At lunch, he slid an extra sandwich across the workbench and said, "Whatever it is, kid, it won't last forever. Not if you don't let it." I nodded, though I didn't fully believe him. Rock bottom doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, a dull ache that settles in your chest and doesn't leave. It's coming back from a double shift with sore hands and soaked boots, realizing you don't have a home, just a garage with thin walls and a curtain for privacy. It's sitting there at 3 a.m, hoodie pulled over your face, understanding that your family has decided you were a bad investment. They weren't done punishing me for leaving. I didn't even have much left to retrieve. A few clothes, a shelf of books, my guitar if it hadn't already been sold or tossed. Still, it hurt knowing my name, my space, my existence in that house were being wiped away like a stain on their perfect image. That week, I nearly broke. I skipped 2 shifts. I didn't answer when Lynn knocked. I barely ate or slept. I just lay there listening to the wind hit the garage door, wondering what came next. And then something small pulled me back. A book. Not just any book. My book. I thought I'd lost it during the move. It was buried at the bottom of my backpack, a worn copy of Into the Wild by John Krakauer. I'd read it 3 times before. That night I opened it and found a sentence I'd underlined years ago. Happiness is only real when shared. It should have made me feel worse. Instead, it made something clear. I'd been trying to share my life with people who didn't want it. I kept offering pieces of myself, hoping someone would finally say, "We see you. You matter." They never did. That wasn't the family I was born into, and I couldn't change them. I could only change myself. The next morning, I went back to work. I apologized to my supervisor for missing shifts and volunteered for the overnight schedule for the next 2 weeks to make up for it. He didn't ask questions. He just handed me a night staff badge and nodded. The work was harder, heavier loads, colder nights, but I needed it. That was the beginning of rebuilding. Quiet, simple, and mine. Over the next 6 months, I found a rhythm. Wake up, work, read, sleep, repeat. I saved every extra dollar. I cut costs, downloaded budgeting apps, canceled unnecessary expenses, even stopped using mobile data. Lynn noticed and started giving me extra tasks to offset rent. Sometimes he'd hand me $20 and call it grocery money, like I hadn't just spent hours cleaning his engine. I applied to community college again, this time without my parents' involvement, and paid the fee myself. I cried after submitting the essay. It was honest. No excuses. I wrote about growing up unseen, how silence can be louder than shouting, and how you learn to build yourself when no one hands you the tools. Slowly, things shifted. One night, while cleaning the warehouse floor, I overheard 2 logistics workers complaining about a software error in a shipment system. I'd learned enough just by listening over time to understand what they were talking about. And for the first time, I realized I might actually have something to offer beyond just lifting boxes. A little coding through an online course I had been taking. Nothing major, just a free Python class. But I offered a solution anyway. At first, they brushed it off. 2 days later, one of them pulled me aside and said, "Hey, that thing you mentioned, it actually worked." Before long, I became the unofficial person people went to when a computer froze or a printer went wild. There was no promotion or title, but people started remembering my name, thanking me, and acknowledging me. It felt strange in a quiet way, the kind that makes you pause and think, maybe I'm not just background noise after all. My first real win came in early summer. I received an email from the community college. I'd been accepted with a scholarship, not a full one, but enough to cover tuition as long as I kept working part-time. I remember staring at the screen, rereading the word congratulations over and over, like it might disappear if I blinked. That night, Lynn let me use his kitchen to bake a boxed cake. It came out uneven and slightly burned, but I didn't care. I wrote my name on it in blue icing, Ethan. Just Ethan. There was no group celebration, no forgotten candle, no lecture. It was just me in a worn-down garage, celebrating something I'd earned on my own. I didn't call my parents. I didn't tell them. I assumed they'd hear eventually. News travels fast in a small town. And sure enough, one day at the grocery store, I ran into an old neighbor, Mrs. Langford. She was a kind woman who used to slip me cookies when my mother wasn't paying attention. When she saw me, she smiled and said, "I heard you're going to college. Your mom must be so proud." I nodded and said, "Yeah, she must be." But I knew the truth. They weren't proud. If anything, they were probably upset that I'd done it without them. And for the first time, I was okay with that. Their approval was no longer something I needed. Later that week, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my mother. She didn't cry or yell. She spoke calmly. "We heard about school. I'm glad you're doing well. Just remember where you came from." I replayed that message several times. It sounded less like support and more like a reminder of where she thought I belonged. But instead of anger, I felt relief. By the end of summer, I moved out of Lynn's garage. I found a shared apartment near campus with 2 roommates who mostly kept to themselves and didn't ask personal questions. I started classes and landed a part-time IT job at the school's help desk. It wasn't impressive, but it paid the bills. Slowly, I began building something that looked like a life. I still carried emotional scars. Loud voices made me tense. Compliments felt suspicious. I caught myself apologizing for taking up space. But I was learning. Healing isn't loud. It isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just sitting with a cup of coffee in a quiet room and realizing you're no longer afraid of being seen. One night, I opened a new notebook and wrote down a list of truths, things I'd learned that couldn't be taken from me. At the top, I wrote, "You don't need permission to become someone they never imagined." Below that, "Your worth isn't measured by someone else's disappointment. You can start over, even when they say you can't. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who supports you when no one is watching." I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and slept better than I had in years. I should have known it wasn't finished. Just when I thought I was free, something pulled me back. It began with a message request. Late one night, I was studying for a midterm, sitting on my apartment floor with a half-eaten burrito and several troubleshooting tabs open. The message was from Mrs. Langford, my parents' old neighbor. I hadn't used Facebook in months and only kept the account for emergencies. We hadn't spoken in years. Her message was simple. Hey, Ethan. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but I thought you deserved to know. Your parents listed the house for sale. The sign went up this week. I hope you're doing well. I stared at the screen and read it again. The house was for sale. Our house. At first, I felt nothing. Then something sharp settled in. I'd always assumed they'd sell eventually, maybe after Luke moved out. But the timing felt deliberate. After cutting me off, after erasing me. So I did what anyone curious would do. I opened Zillow. The listing was easy to find. A bright photo of the front porch, freshly cleaned white shutters, the oak tree still casting its uneven shadow. The description was polished and hollow. A charming family home, lovingly maintained, full of character. I scrolled through the photos. Living room, kitchen, master bedroom, bedroom one, my breath caught. My room had been turned into a guest bedroom. Neutral walls, beige bedding, generic artwork, no trace of me, no sign that someone had grown up there for nearly 2 decades. They hadn't just pushed me out, they'd erased me. That's when the idea began. That weekend, I borrowed a collared shirt from my roommate, printed a fake pre-approval letter using an online template, and scheduled a tour with a burner email. I told myself it was just curiosity. When I pulled up in a borrowed car, I didn't feel nostalgia or anger, just numbness. The porch still creaked. The front door still had the old scratch from when I tried to sneak in a stray cat years ago. The real estate agent, a cheerful woman named Sasha, had no idea what she was walking into. The sellers are very motivated, she said brightly. They've already moved most of their personal items out and are downsizing now that their youngest is away at college. I nodded and followed her through the house, barely listening. I was focused on the empty spaces, the missing pieces. In the backyard, I stopped. The fence was new. The treehouse I'd built with my uncle when I was 12 was gone, torn down. I'll give you a minute, Sasha said, sensing something. I nodded and walked toward the fence, hands in my pockets to keep them steady. That night, I sat in my car long after it cooled, and I knew it wasn't curiosity anymore. They wanted to pretend I never existed. Fine. Then I'd make sure the world knew exactly who I was and that losing me was their mistake. I didn't want to destroy the house. That would have been too easy. I wanted something slower, smarter, and lasting. So I started planning. The first step was research. I spent the next week reviewing property records and public databases. That's when I found something interesting. The mortgage wasn't paid off and they were behind on payments. I noted it and moved on. Then I called Milo, an old high school classmate who ran a tech club and now works freelance in cybersecurity. We were never especially close, but I knew 2 things about him. He hated bullies, and he owed me a favor from years earlier when I covered for him during a plagiarism accusation. We met for coffee, and I shared a version of my story. Not all of it, just the essentials. What do you need? He asked. I told him I needed access to real estate records, possible seller disclosures, and any correspondence he could find. I wanted to know what my parents were hiding. Milo cracked his knuckles and said, "Give me 48 hours. He finished in 36. My parents had listed the house without disclosing a serious plumbing problem that started in the basement, an issue that could cost thousands to repair. The documents weren't just misleading, they were illegal. I saved everything, printed copies, and backed it all up to encrypted cloud storage. The proof was solid, but I didn't want to use it all at once. At the same time, I contacted the college administration office to confirm something I'd been working toward quietly for months. Because of my GPA and work-study contributions, I qualified to transfer into a full scholarship program. They also invited me to speak at the fall orientation as a first-generation student. That's when the idea came together. What if they saw me on stage, holding a scholarship certificate, announced as someone they'd given up on? And what if, around the same time, the buyers backed out of their house deal and their fraudulent paperwork came to light? What if the image they'd built started to crack, not because I yelled, but because I succeeded, smiled, and made it clear they were never part of the journey? That was the foundation, but I wasn't finished. I still had one more card, Luke. He was their golden child, their pride. But I knew things about him they didn't. Old screenshots, messages sent from his school-issued tablet when he was 17, joking about taking money from my father's wallet and blaming the maid. I hadn't used any of it yet, but I would if they forced my hand. I didn't need to destroy their lives. I just needed them to watch me build mine without them, piece by piece. Comments about incomplete community service hours and having friends sign attendance forms seemed minor on their own until they were bundled together and handed to a college admissions committee. When the moment came, I struck. Quietly, carefully, clearly. Then I stepped away. Not angry, not broken, just done. I didn't want the ending to be loud. No scene, no outburst. I wanted it measured, like setting the final stone in place. And that's exactly how it happened. The first domino was the house sale. I waited until the buyers had completed inspections, financing, and all the drawn-out steps. Then I sent an anonymous package through a forwarding service that left no return address. Inside the flash drive were photos of basement flooding caused by the failing sump pump, screenshots of the false disclosure forms, and a short note. This house has a serious issue. The sellers did not repair it. They covered it up. If you sign, the problem becomes yours. Ask the agent about the sump pump and see what happens. The impact was immediate. My parents were already behind on their mortgage. With the issue now legally flagged, they couldn't manipulate the paperwork again. 3 days later, the listing vanished. Zillow went dark. I didn't need to do anything else. I just watched. Around the same time, I agreed to give the orientation speech. The school arranged for a local news crew to film part of it for a segment on community success stories. I expected a short clip. What I didn't expect was the article. A few days later, the City College Board asked to publish my story on their website. I thought it would be a paragraph. Instead, they ran a full profile, photos included. From dropout to dean's list, Ethan Lane's journey from abandonment to academic success. It was more dramatic than I liked, but it was true, and it spread. Former classmates, teachers, neighbors shared it. Eventually, my parents saw it too. I found out through a screenshot someone sent me. A Facebook comment, passive and unmistakably my mother's. This article exaggerates a lot. Some kids just don't appreciate how much their family sacrifices for them. She was spinning. And I still wasn't done. Luke had started applying to transfer schools. I still had those screenshots. I didn't want to destroy his future, but I wanted him to understand he wasn't untouchable. So I sent a short anonymous email to the admissions office of the school he wanted. It mentioned questionable community service records, irregular attendance documentation, and prior academic issues. I attached 3 old screenshots and signed it for the integrity of your academic program. Whether they acted or not didn't matter. What mattered was that Luke would step into a new environment knowing he wasn't protected anymore. What I didn't expect was how they came to me afterward, separately. First, my father showed up at the university assistance desk one Tuesday morning. His eyes were red, tie loose, face worn down. "Ethan," he said, "we need to talk." I looked at him calmly. "You mean now that the house can't be sold and Luke's applications are falling apart?" He froze. "We didn't realize it was this bad. You've made your point." "No," I said. "You still don't get it. That's why it reached this point." He tried again. "We can fix this. Maybe you can come home." I smiled slightly. "There is no home. You burned that bridge and sold the ashes." I turned and walked away. He didn't follow. 2 weeks later, my mother left a letter under my apartment door. No envelope, just a page. She wrote that they'd made mistakes, but I was being cruel, that punishing them didn't make me better, that this was still family. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent her a single photo by email. Me standing under the college banner holding my scholarship certificate, smiling. On the back, I wrote, "This is what consequences look like." That was the last time I contacted them. Since then, the house was foreclosed on. Luke transferred, but not to the school he wanted. My parents moved into a smaller rental 2 counties away. I'm doing well. I graduated with honors. I work with an organization that helps first-generation students navigate college without family support. I mentor kids who feel invisible the way I once did. I have a new apartment, a dog, a full refrigerator, friends who chose me, and I've never needed to look back. My response wasn't loud. There were no slammed doors or shouting matches. It came quietly, through steady progress and success, built one step at a time. They'll spend the rest of their lives pretending they didn't lose a son. I'll spend the rest of mine knowing I never lost myself. I was never the disappointment in that house. I was the one who escaped. They just never noticed.